In the coming days, I expect to speak with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov for the first time since the war began. I plan to raise an issue that's a top priority for us: the release of Americans Paul Whelan and Brittney Griner, who've been wrongfully detained and must be allowed to come home. We put a substantial proposal on the table weeks ago to facilitate their release. Our governments have communicated repeatedly and directly on that proposal. And I'll use the conversation to follow up personally and, I hope, move us toward a resolution.
Can you talk about why you would make such an important, why you would put what you call a substantial offer on the table?
We have two objectives. We, of course, want to see those who are wrongfully detained be released and be able to return home. At the same time, it's important that we work to reinforce the global norm against these arbitrary detentions, against what is truly a horrific practice. So we're working concertedly on both. We demonstrated with Trevor Reed, who came home a few months ago, that the president is prepared to make tough decisions if it means the safe return of Americans. At the same time, we are working with partners around the world to use all of the relevant tools at our disposal, including some that were announced just recently in executive order that the president released, to respond to and impose costs on those who engage in this practice. And I believe we can actually fulfill both imperatives.
My colleagues and I are strongly committed to bringing inflation back down, and we're moving expeditiously to do so. We have both the tools we need and the resolve it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. The economy and the country have been through a lot over the past 2.5 years and have proved resilient. It is essential that we bring inflation down to our 2% goal if we are to have a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. From the standpoint of our congressional mandate to promote maximum employment and price stability, the current picture is plain to see. The labor market is extremely tight, and inflation is much too high. Against this backdrop, today the FOMC raised its policy interest rate by 0.75 percentage point and anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate. Today's increase in the target range is the second 75 basis point increase in as many meetings. While another unusually large increase could be appropriate at our next meeting, that is a decision that will depend on the data we get between now and then.
Given the uncertainty and the sort of paradoxical flow of data you've been getting, if you're going to make a mistake, would you rather make the mistake on doing too much, raising too much, than raising too little?
We're trying not to make a mistake. Let me put it this way. We do see that there are two-sided risks. There would be the risk of doing too much and imposing more of a downturn on the economy than was necessary. But the risk of doing too little and leaving the economy with this entrenched inflation, it only raises the cost. If you fail to deal with it in the near term, it only raises the cost of dealing with it later. To the extent people start to see it as just part of their economic lives, they start to factor high inflation into their decisions, when that, on a sustained basis, when that starts to really happen, and we don't think that's happened yet, but when that starts to happen, it just gets that much harder and the pain will be that much greater. So I really do think that it's important that we address this now and get it done.
U.S. basketball player Brittney Griner testified in a Russian court Wednesday that her rights weren't read when she was detained at a Moscow airport in February.
No, my rights were never read to me. No one explained any of it to me.
Griner is on trial for drug charges that could cost her up to 10 years in prison. The 31-year-old WNBA star plays in Russia during the league's off-season. She was detained when agents found vape cartridges containing hashish oil in her luggage. Griner said in court Wednesday that she was not provided with an interpreter and did not understand what papers she was made to sign.
I can only assume that they were about the search and the cartridges. We had to use my phone and Google Translate for him to be able to tell me a little bit.
She pleaded guilty earlier in the trial, but denied she intended to break Russian law. Griner said on Wednesday that she did not understand how the vape cartridges could have ended up in her luggage, saying she had packed hurriedly and could have accidentally included them. Griner said she had been prescribed medical cannabis in the U.S. to treat chronic injuries, but it is illegal in Russia. The case against her has highlighted strained relations between Russia and the United States that have plunged to their lowest since the Cold War over the Russian invasion of Ukraine. U.S. officials say Griner has been wrongly detained and called for her immediate release. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday the U.S. had made a substantial offer to bring home Griner and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, convicted in Russia of spying.
We, of course, want to see those who are wrongfully detained be released and be able to return home. At the same time, it's important that we work to reinforce the global norm against these arbitrary detentions.
The Kremlin has said the case against her has nothing to do with politics and that she should be tried for violating Russian law.
U.S. President Joe Biden celebrated his recovery from COVID-19 on Wednesday with an appeal to Americans to use the tools available to them to fight the virus.
My symptoms were mild, my recovery was quick, and I'm feeling great.
Thanking his medical team, the 79-year-old president said he will be returning to work in person after testing negative for 2 days. Biden, whose symptoms included a cough, sore throat, and body aches, said he was able to work through his illness and recover quickly thanks to COVID-19 vaccines, Paxlovid, and regular testing.
You don't need to be president to get these tools used for your defense. In fact, the same booster shots, the same at-home test, the same treatment that I got is available to you.
Biden compared the impact COVID had on him to former U.S. President Donald Trump, who came down with the virus in October 2020, before vaccines were available.
Here's the bottom line. When my predecessor got COVID, he had to get helicoptered to Walter Reed Medical Center. He was severely ill. Thankfully, he recovered. When I got COVID, I worked from upstairs of the White House, and the office is upstairs, and for that 5-day period. The difference is vaccinations, of course.
While he is ending his isolation period, he will continue to wear a mask around other people for the next 10 days, according to a memo released by his physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. O'Connor also said Biden would be tested regularly to watch for a potential rebound COVID-19 case of a sort experienced by some patients who have been treated with Paxlovid.
And now, I get to go back to the Oval Office. Thank you all very much.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession.
The U.S. Federal Reserve raised its benchmark overnight interest rate by 0.75 percentage point on Wednesday in its fight against record-high inflation, a widely expected move that strengthened a stock market rally and reassured investors in no mood for surprises. The Dow gained more than 1.33%, the S&P 500 ended more than 2.5% higher, while the Nasdaq surged 4%. Comments from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell further fueled the stock market rally after he said the U.S. central bank would likely need to slow the pace of interest rate increases at some point.
As the stance of monetary policy tightens further, it likely will become appropriate to slow the pace of increases while we assess how our cumulative policy adjustments are affecting the economy and inflation.
George Cipollini is portfolio manager at Penn Mutual Asset Management.
They should step down. I think this expectation was either 75 or 100. They did 75. The next one, depending on what the data shows, will probably be similar, maybe, above 25 basis points. And then, yes, I expect we should step down to the normal 25 basis point moves. Again, all depending on what occurs over the next few months.
The news from the Fed added to gains from upbeat quarterly reports from Microsoft and Google parent Alphabet, which rose more than 6% and 7% respectively. Microsoft said it expected double-digit revenue growth this fiscal year, while Alphabet reported better than expected sales of Google search ads, easing worries about a slowing advertising market. That boosted shares of other mega-cap stocks, including Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and Meta Platforms. But after the close, the Facebook owner issued a gloomy forecast after recording its first ever quarterly drop in revenue, sending shares in the other direction in extended trading.